But today we're in the midpoint of this series that we are calling Beginnings. Let me do a quick review of where we've been the last couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, I began the series with this idea of we're created. That is, we have been gifted with the image of God. When we look at the opening pages, literally the opening sentences of Scripture, which it begins in the beginning. So this is where we get this idea of beginnings. In the beginning, God. What did God do? God created the heavens and the earth. And we began to go through the days of creation. And when we get to day 6, it is day 6 where God says, let us make man in our own image. And we're told God created man in his image. And he created humanity, male and female, in his image. So we looked at this idea of God created humanity. God created humanity in the most perfect sense of being human. Okay. So I want you to get an important truth. When God created Adam and Eve, as he created them, that is what it looks like to be perfectly human. That is perfect humanity. But humanity didn't stay in its perfect state. Because when God created us perfectly human, one of the things that makes us perfectly human is we have choice. We have the ability to choose. And that ability to choose is a part of who we are as being created in the image of God. Some choices were made in the early days of humanity's journey that caused something to go awry. Something became broken. And that's where we came to last week. And Pastor Tim led us and taught us so well as we talked about what does it mean to be broken. But in the brokenness that occurs in what we call in theology the fall, the image of God inside us becomes distorted. I think it's really important for you to understand this. The fall impacts the image of God inside of us. The image gets distorted. Now, please hear me. The image doesn't disappear. So the image doesn't go away. It just becomes twisted and bent in some ways that make it less than what God intended it to be. It's no longer perfectly human. See, in humanity, and I want you to see, in humanity, what we call inhumanity is a distortion or twisting of the image of God in us. That's why when we look across human history and we see things happen in human beings' relationship with each other, and when we describe those events, we say of them, that was inhumane. That is, that was less than human. What are we saying? We are saying that what we see in those events, what we see in those acts, is a distortion, a twisting of the image of God. Is not how God intended us to live together. We need to pray as we've never prayed, because so much of the deep-seated division, hatred, violence, list it all. Everything we see in our world. And some of it is playing out in front of us on our televisions on a daily basis. Where does that all come from? It comes from a distortion, a bending, a twisting of the image of God. And it really makes no difference. Please hear my heart. Please hear my heart. It makes no difference if the hatred or violence is coming from one side of the spectrum or the other. wherever it's coming from, it's not coming from the heart of God. Because God does not come out with a heart of hatred, a heart of violence, a heart that is absent of love. God's perfectly loving. Inhumanity always comes out of our brokenness. Always out of our brokenness. There's a scripture, and I want you to see this reference. I'm not going to read the scripture, but Genesis 4, 2b to 7. This is a story of Cain and Abel. It happens in Genesis 4. This is one of the first great acts of inhumanity we see in the human story. And what happens? Cain becomes jealous of his brother Abel. And what does he do? He actually premeditates, all right? So if you want to know, where did the idea come from in our law of premeditated murder? It comes from the story of Cain and Abel. Cain premeditates the murder of his brother Abel. In other words, he plots it and he plans it. How do we know it's premeditated? Here's how we know. God confronts him and says, hey, Cain, I know what you're thinking in your heart. I know what you're about to do. And I'm coming to you, Cain, and saying, hey, don't do this. Don't do this. There's another way. There's another path. But notice what God didn't do. God did not thwart. God did not prevent Cain from exercising his free will. God allowed him to exercise free will. In the exercise of it, Cain chose the wrong path. He didn't choose the path that leads toward God. He led the path that leads away from God. He chose the inhumane path. He carried out his plot, and he murdered his brother Abel. I have always in my reading of Genesis been astounded at how quickly this happens in the human story. So this is very revelatory about something. The impact of the fall inside of us, how it distorted the image of God, is actually quite significant. Because unless you understand that, how do you explain how inhumane humans can be at times? So there is this brokenness inside of us. But now we turn to where we're at today. We're in week 3, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about longing. Longing. This is the desire of the image of God. This is something that happens inside broken human beings where they begin to recognize they're broken and they begin to long for something different. Something that came out of creation. They begin to long for the image of God back inside themselves. Not bent and twisted, but straightened out. I remember on 9/11, that evening, of course, this was a global story. They were interviewing people all over the world. And in this particular news segment, they were interviewing people in Japan who were looking at their television screens all out in front of a big department store. So they were all standing in front of this window in this department store and watching the scenes that were coming from the United States on 9/11. And the journalist was interviewing different people who were watching. They came to a particular Japanese woman, and they asked her, what are your thoughts with what you're seeing? I will never forget what this woman from Japan said. Now think about this. So this was totally spontaneous. She did not have hours to think about this. This was her immediate gut reaction to the question. What do you think about all of this? Here's what she said. I think there is something very wrong with us as humans, and it needs to be fixed. Wow! What an amazing theological statement, and she had no idea she was making a theological statement. There's something wrong inside us humans. Broken. It needs to be fixed. Longing. The desire of the image of God. You see, there is a deep need to recover our humanity. But I want to give you a little teaser here. The big problem humans have had is this thought. We need to recover our humanity, but we can recover our humanity all by ourselves without any help at all. Which is the big flaw and the big lie. That we can fix what's wrong inside us all by ourselves. We don't need any help. So I want to ask a question. What is a human person or self? What are they comprised of? Here we are in the room, those of you online. We all can acknowledge we're human beings, every one of us. We don't all look alike, but we share humanity. We are human. We know we are human. So what is a human being? What are they made up of? Well, I want to suggest to you that human beings are made up of three things. They're made up of body. There's a material side to us. There's flesh and bone. And there's this thing we call our bodies. And our bodies, have you ever thought of your body? Your body is one whole, but it is a whole body that is comprised of multiple systems that make your body function. When I was in the hospital back a number of years ago, and I had a lot of time to think about how doctors fix human bodies that get all broken, because I had weeks to think on this topic. I began to realize my body, your body, is made up of all of these amazing systems that God has interwoven together all in one body, and these systems are all designed to work together to make it function. That is, there is a material side to us. There's a physical side to us. We have bodies. But that's not all that we are. We also have mind. We might say also, in saying mind, we have soul. So we're not just bodies, we have thoughts. In fact, everybody's thinking right now. Now, I hope you're thinking about what I'm saying. It's possible someone's thinking about lunch right now. It's quite possible. I don't know what you're thinking. You know what I'm thinking because I'm actually uttering my thoughts right now. Because everything I'm saying, before I say a word of it, it is a thought in my mind before I say it. And you have a mind. You have a soul. There is an emotional side to you. There is a side to you that it's not material. How do you describe a thought? A thought's not a material thing. A feeling is not a material thing. There is a different side to us that we can't fully define. But we're not just body and mind or soul. We are also spirit. When God breathed into Adam, he became a living being. There is a spiritual component of who we are. This is the part of us, which I want to say to you, this is the part of us that most resembles the image of God, because God is spirit. So there is these parts of us. So I want you to see who we are. We are, look at this, we are three parts, but we are one person. There is an amazing correspondence between human beingness and who God is. We're not God. So please, please, please do not make the big error that so many have made. We aren't God. We are shaped in the image of God. We can have a relationship with God, but we're human. We're not God. God is God. God is God all alone. There is no one but God who is God. But we're human. But there is a correspondence. I want you to see this. In man, there is body. It's 100% human. Soul, 100% human. Spirit, 100% human. In the spirit is God consciousness. In the soul is self-consciousness. In the body is, I will call, environmental or world consciousness. We're aware of what's around us. It's how a little child learns with the gift of touch, which is a part of the body and the nerve endings. A little child learns the difference between what's hot and what's cold, and you don't touch hot things because hot things burn you. They learn that. Why? Because they become conscious of the world around them, their environment. You remember the first time you realized something about your world. To tell you a little funny story, my parents told me my biggest difficulty as a kid when we would go on a trip, I didn't understand how you could go from one state to the next, because I never saw us cross any lines. They said, well, see that sign, it says state line. And I would look, I didn't see any line. So how do we go from one state to the next? How do you go from one city to the next? Can I tell you, in my mind at that time, and how I was thinking of the world around me, everywhere was West Virginia. Everywhere was West Virginia. I didn't see us leave West Virginia. I just saw us, it just was a change of scenery, right? It took me a while to become that conscious of my world and how that works. But we are body, soul, and spirit, all of that, 3 parts, but one person. And by the way, you can't tear these parts away from each other. They are so intricately woven together that they comprise the whole person, and yet they're distinct parts. The same over in who God is. God is 3 persons, but one God. God, 3 persons, one God. Human beings, 3 parts, one person. I think there's something even how God wove and knit us together that reflects His own beingness, who He is. It's an amazing thing. You see, 3 separate parts, but one person. But can we go back to that graph one more time? I just want to show you something. See this part here, spirit, the God consciousness? It's deep in us. This is where what I want to talk about as longing, this is where it comes from. It literally cries out of us. What does it cry for? For the image of God. For our humanness. Of what it really means to be human, and the way God intended for it to be restored. We cry out of this part of us. So I want to look just really quickly, and I'm going to go fast, so take notes fast, because I'm really going to go fast on this. I want to talk about some of the great longings of human beings. Here's the first one. There is the longing for affection and love. Every human being has a longing for affection and love. Affection and loving touch are so important. Listen, they're so important. I want you to see this. They are so important that sometimes we cannot survive without them. Let me give you an example. A newly born child cannot survive without human touch. A child born, a brand new baby. Now, you all know what I'm going to say is the absolute truth. If you have a brand new baby born and you put the baby down and you just let the baby lay there and you walk away and you say, new baby, take care of yourself. Feed yourself. Feed yourself. Meet all of your needs yourself. And we step back and we say, no one will touch the baby. We all know, listen, we all know what will happen to that child. We know. I don't even need to say. And I'm not going to say because I don't have to say. You already know what will happen to the child. Because the child cannot take care of itself. It's not how life works. You see, this affection and loving touch is so critical. There are times as a human you can't even survive without it. But we can never, look at this, we can never thrive without it. Because the baby grows up, and the baby may grow up and become an adult who says, you know what, I don't need anyone. I don't need anything. I need nothing. You may survive without affection and love, but you will never thrive without it, because you weren't designed that way. See 2 Peter 1:7. Peter tells us, add to godliness mutual affection. Look at, and to mutual affection add love. He lists both affection and love. A second thing we long for, we deeply long for this, is acceptance. Now, I want to be really clear what I mean by acceptance. I don't mean by that we live our lives going around asking everyone, what do you think about me? Do you like me? Do you not like me? Do you like what I'm wearing today? Do you approve of everything? And we just spend our whole lives just trying to do what others expect, want, desire. That's not what we mean by acceptance. What we mean by acceptance is this. We mean that we are uniquely who we are, and we long for others to accept us, the person that we are. Who we are. Our personalities are all different. We all look different. Our culture is one, can I tell you, our culture is one that's really bad about doing something. We're really bad about putting out what we call models, and I use that term figuratively and literally. But we put models out in front of others, and we say these models are really what it's supposed to look like. If you can look like the models on the magazine covers, if you can look like the models we put in front of you, man, we will applaud you, we will accept you, we will say you're great, because here are the models. Here's the problem. The models are all broken too. It's just what we've decided on the outside we think it ought to look like. But we all know many of the models that are set out in front of us, inside, they are so horribly broken. So that cannot be what it means to be human. That cannot be what it means to be accepted. I think we even at times do a great disservice in the artistic images we try to put forward of Jesus. We always try to make him look a little bit like Fabio. Long flowing hair, nice looking guy. How do we know he looked like that? I think he had very dark hair, was cut as Jewish males cut their hair in the first century. It was dark, and I think he had a beard. I think he had olive tan skinned. I think he looked like a Hebrew male of his time. I think that's what he looked like. And I thank God we have no descriptions of his image or no photographs, no paintings of any kind that were made contemporaneously with his life. Here's why. Because people would be lined up to worship the painting. And we're not to worship a model. We're to worship the God-man. We're to worship him. We're to accept him for who he is. And does God accept us for who we are? Listen to what Paul writes in Romans 15:7. This is an amazing thing that Paul writes in Romans 15:7. Listen, accept one another then just as Christ accepted you. I want to ask you straight up, how did Jesus accept you? Did you come to Jesus and Jesus looked you over and said, I'll tell you what, I was thinking about accepting you, but you don't quite measure up today. Go back. Here's a list. Here's a list of all the things I want you to change and get right. When you get these things all changed and you've got them all right, then I will accept you. No. When we come to Christ, we come just as we are. We can come all broken, messed up. We can come with every kind of issue you want to think about. But if we come humbly with repentant hearts to Jesus, Jesus has never turned one person away based on what they look like or how they were acting. He always accepted people where they were and welcomed them. Even the tax collectors and the sinners. We're to accept each other just like Jesus accepted us, and it brings praise to God. Well, let me go fast now. Affirmation. We long for affirmation. We desire it. We want to be encouraged. We want to be built up. Ephesians 4:29, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Man, look at that. Building others up. What if we were to say in 2021, here's what we're going to do as God's people at Maiden Lane. The real test for whether our speech is okay or not is this. Does our speech build others up according to their needs? If it doesn't, we aren't going to say it. If it does, we will. Wow. That's actually a command in our New Testament. Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what's helpful for building others up. That's affirmation. We all long for that. We long for this fourth thing. We long for blessing. We long to be blessed by God and by others. I've been reading through the book of Genesis. If those of you are following me on Facebook right now, we're reading through the Bible this year, and each day I'm writing a reflection. So we've been in the book of Genesis, and we're about to finish it up today. So today we're at Genesis chapter 50. But one of the stories in Genesis that just gripped me is the story of Jacob and Esau. And Jacob depriving or stealing his brother Esau's birthright and blessing. But Esau says something to their father Isaac. Okay? Listen to what in Genesis 27:34, when Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with loud and a bitter cry, and he said to his father, look at what he says to Isaac, bless me too, my father. What was he so distraught about? Jacob had received the blessing that he longed for from their father Isaac. And all Esau is saying is, Dad, do you have any blessing inside of you left for me? So I want to say something to moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas. If you have more than one child and more than one grandchild, you're going to get tested. Because I've seen this play out in families. Our families, you've seen it play out. It plays out in families where a parent or grandparent chooses to make one of the children or grandchildren the most beloved and favored, and the rest have to beg for blessing. They have to beg for it. Whatever you do, hear my heart. Please hear my heart. Do not make a child or grandchild of yours ever have to beg for blessing. Just give it to them. Give it to them. They need it so desperately. We also long, and we're going to talk about these more next week, but I want you to see them. We long for care and compassion. We also long for connection and community. These are so critical. And next week when we talk about belonging, we'll talk more about care and compassion and connection and community. But as I wrap up, here are these final longings. We long for meaning, purpose, and significance. We do. Human beings long for this, friend. Listen, a human being who has no purpose will soon be filled with despair. They will soon just walk around our world aimlessly. I want to say to you, pay attention in our community. When you see people inside our community who are just walking around aimlessly, Here's why. They do not have any sense of meaning, purpose, and significance in their lives. That has been lost inside of them, and now they just wander aimlessly without purpose. You say, well, when did this start for them, Pastor Mark? It actually started when they were children. But no one ever got them turned down to a path of purpose and significance. And they grew up with that inside of them. And there's this just big empty hole inside them as a human being. And now they just walk around aimlessly. No purpose. I can't think of anything more tragic for a human being than that right there. I love what Paul writes in 2 Timothy 2:20 and 21. He said, in a large house there are articles not only of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay. Some are for spatial purposes, some for common use. Those who cleanse themselves from the latter will be, listen, instruments for spatial purposes, made holy, useful to the master, and prepared to do any good work. So I want to say something to you. Do not lose your sense of meaning, purpose, and significance. Do not stop pursuing your God-given goals and dreams. Those things inside you that you long for and you feel at times, this is like a calling that comes inside of you. And you want to pursue a goal or a dream that's coming to you from God. Don't let anyone stop you from doing that. Go for it, and go for it with God's help, because you were created to live out a God-given purpose. Those of you online, God made you in His image. Yes, sin broke something in us, but God has come to restore it. And God wants you to have His purpose for your life. Don't lose that. And if you've lost it, let God give it back to you today. Because that's how we were made to live as human beings. We're not supposed to just walk around on planet Earth aimlessly. But we also long for forgiveness and grace. We all know we need forgiveness and grace. I want you to see an important principle. Here it is. You can live in your past with its regrets. This is your choice. You can live in your past with its regrets, or you can live beyond your past with its regrets. Let me tell you what you can never change, and I can't. You cannot change your past and its regrets. Your past is your past. Whatever choices you've made up to today, whatever choices I've made up to today, you and I cannot go back and undo one of those choices. Every word you said up to this moment, you can't go back and change any of those words. You've already said them. It's been done. Choices have been made. But you do have a choice. You can live in the past with all of its regrets, and your past will become your prison. Or you can live beyond your past with its regrets, and your past can become your praise. But let me point out something to you. See this one right here? In your past, you don't need any help. You can do that one all by yourself. You can do that one. No one needs to help you. You can do it. See this one right here? Beyond this one, you cannot do that without God's help. You can do the first all on your own, but you can do the second only by God's forgiving grace. Only God can take you beyond your past with your regrets. Which leads me to this longing. Hope. I believe that right now, January the 17th, in the year of our Lord 2021, the greatest need in Springfield, Ohio, in the United States of America, and in the world. I don't believe there's anything that even is a close second. Right now, our world is crying out for some hope. Hopelessness has been so strong. Despair is like, listen, it is like, and you may not get this metaphor, but I love Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and I love the Sherlock Holmes stories. Despair is right now in our world like the hound of Baskerville, and it's chasing after us, trying to have us. Despair. But the hound of darkness isn't the only hound there is. There is the hound of heaven. There is hope. Hope is pursuing us too. Who are we going to let take us? Despair or hope? I'm saying to you, hope is so critical. Hebrews 10:23, let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. Hope, listen, hope is not about what you have right now. Hope is about what you don't have. Paul said it so well. You don't hope for what you already have. If you already have it, you don't hope for it anymore because you possess it. Hope's about what you don't possess yet. I was talking to my mom just a couple of days ago, and my mom was sharing with me the whole story. She's went and she's got her first shot of her COVID-19 vaccine. So 3 weeks from now, she'll get shot number 2. And she was telling me all the people who were lined up and how they were doing all of this. Our world's has been hoping for a vaccine. We prayed for it. People have worked so hard to get this ready. And you know what? We don't have to hope anymore. Listen, we have a vaccine. In fact, we have more than one vaccine. You say, I don't have mine yet. It's coming, but it's there. It exists. But there are things we're hoping for. Can I tell you what? I talked to a friend last night who is, I would consider, an expert on things with public health. I asked this question: when can I expect as a pastor to be able to look at our people and to say, you know what, it's okay, we can all show up, and you know what, you don't even need to worry about putting your mask on. He said, well, I'll give you a real honest answer, Pastor Mark. Probably sometime about the middle part of our summer is where that's probably going to happen. And I said, thank you. That gives me hope. That gives me hope. Because I said to someone, I think I see a light at the end of that tunnel. I'm just hoping it's not a train. You know what I mean? I'm hoping it's actually the light at the end of the tunnel, not another train coming at me. Because we have felt like it's just a train coming. But I think we're beginning to see real light at the end of the tunnel. We're hoping. See, hope is about what we don't have. And I want to remind you of something. Hope, if it is hope at all, is not just about this life. 1 Corinthians 15:19. If only for this life you have hope, you are of all people to be pitied. Our hope is beyond this life. Our hope is for eternity. So I want to wrap up with this question. What is a great longing you have? What is a great longing you have? You see, I have a longing you didn't name, Pastor Mark. Okay. Now you name it. You name it inside you. I'm going to ask us to do something right here at the end. I want you across the room, and I want you online, our dear friends online, our church family online, everyone online, wherever you're at listening, I want to invite you to do this right now. I want you to just take just a few moments. I didn't say minutes, I said moments, just a few moments. I want you to just get quiet. And I want you to just do a little searching inside you. What is a longing that you have? A longing you have. So here's 3 things I want you to do, knowing you have a longing in you. I want you to ask God to cleanse all selfish motivation from your heart. I mean that. Because many times I have longings, you do too. But when I get down to the bottom of the motivation, it's a selfish motivation. And I need God to cleanse me of that. I got to get beyond self-centeredness. I got to get somewhere else. So ask God to cleanse all selfish motivation. Here's the second thing. Do this. Express to God a deep desire or longing of your heart. Whatever that is, tell God. No, I'm not telling you to tell me. Tell God. Express it to God. Say, God, deep in me today, I long for. Tell Him. And third, wait and trust and see what God will do. May I say to you right here, this is perhaps one of the most difficult things you and I are ever asked to do. Wait and trust. And say, okay, God, I want to see what you're going to do. As I close, I want to read the opening line, because I want to get you to the bottom line. The opening line of the song, A Chasing of the Wind. Every heart is filled with longing to be free from all life's pain, yet the search through earthly pleasures always ends in vain. Only God, who made the heavens, can satisfy our souls. Apart from Him and all His meaning, all things fail as they begin, and hearts deceived can only know a chasing of the wind. Bottom line, here it is. Bottom line. We all need God. We all need God. And we need Him now. We need God. That's the deep longing. And that's the only satisfaction we'll ever truly know, is when we find the God we need. Let's worship.